My name is George Yunis. I'm the Senior Director for Creative Services for the ARAMARK Corporation. When I think about the hurdles for the digital signage industry or segment or category, from my perspective, I think we still face a few sort of well-defined issues, one of which is this question of how do we sort of standardize formats and technologies to not be necessarily one ubiquitous technology or format that everyone must follow, but really a few key formats, whether it's from file formats to others. It's the idea that we have a few formats that 80 or 90% of the industry follows or tracks towards when it comes to pushing, producing, delivering content, and then distributing that content. Beyond that, I think the big issue is in terms of hurdles, is the idea of measurement as it's becoming more and more viable through the audience measurement and analytics technologies like formerly Cognivision that Intel purchased recently and others. I think we're now on the threshold of one of the most dynamic ways to measure, but until that's become at least somewhat mainstream, and that could be another year or two, I think that's what we're going to be facing for a big hurdle, is really media buyers, advertisers, and even venue owners seeing feeling secure, I guess, about the value prop behind a digital signage, either network installation or hardware installation or programming and content. The question of cost is tricky because in some ways the costs are relatively manageable and affordable if one is careful. And you can install, in our case at ARAMARK, we create implementation installations that I would argue are as low cost as anybody in the industry and yet are extremely robust and an incredibly robust network, but we're careful not to over-install in the sense that we're trying to do too much content or trying to do too much technology, which then adds to the cost. We've chosen a strategy of sort of crawl, walk, run, and in that respect what we've tried to do is focus on mission critical digital signage communication needs. So if it's facility communications, if it's menu communications, things that communicate in extremely fundamental ways first and are less expensive for us to deliver. From that, then we leapfrog or jump into other types of technology that may require more expensive analytics or more expensive integration with other suppliers or partners. ARAMARK's in a funny position. As a network operator that happens to be an enterprise spanning 7 verticals just in the United States and Canada alone, and with 20 some other nations around the world in which we operate. So whether it's healthcare or higher education or corrections or business and industry or stadiums and convention centers and parks, I mean, we're in many of these verticals. What I think the most dynamic areas for growth are still in higher education. I think that's one of the biggest. And I think it's partly this idea of the lifestyle of that audience fits for digital signage. So I don't think you can just ignore that as being simply the biggest driver for a segment to be successful and continue to be successful. But more importantly in that segment, we have opportunities to really create lifestyle affiliation, not only with necessarily digital signage, but digital signage platforms that extend to mobile or extend to smartphones, for example, or that extend to other types of technology. And so these users are the place where we build the base for this technology to just be beyond mainstream, literally a decade or two or a generation or two from now as technology evolves. So I think that's the biggest, and beyond that I would say probably the next largest sort of sector or segment is intelligent shopping in any type of a shopping vertical. So it could be a mall, it could be a subway station that has shopping in it, it could be a campus, it could be in a hospital. The shopping experience is still, there's tons of great new technology, but it's implemented so sporadically right now that I think that's where the big growth opportunities are, is to sort of get rid of some of the clutter, focus on some of the biggest, most valuable ways to create that consumer experience, and then leverage that or monetize that. I would say that in digital signage, the next big thing is going to be, I think what we're going to see, let's say from this year's Expo to next, what we're going to see, I hope, is not explosion, but at least a rapid acceleration in the number of firms that focus on their value-added skill sets or capabilities beyond hardware and beyond software and beyond installation and so forth, but rather so experts in, for example, menu strategy, experts in shopping strategy in retail environments, or experts in ordering strategy in commercial environments, or experts in interactive and consumer engaging wayfinding, or whatever that may be. What right now I see a lot of is still a heavy preponderance of focus on the hardware and on the software, and some on expertise, but they're not leading with the expertise and then allowing the hardware and software to be the sort of foundation that is quietly there underpinning it. They're still leading with hardware and software. So I do think that as you see firms focus on that change and really kind of identify themselves around that and the value proposition that that gives to their potential targets, clients, consumers, I actually believe next year we're going to see almost categorically that type of a, maybe even a section on the floor of these skill sets, these experiential and consultative kind of capabilities being the forefront. So you don't think of an Intel or a Scala or a wireless Ronin for hardware or integration or software. You think of them for those value-added skill sets that they provide that really take what you do with your network to way, way higher levels. So I think that's what we're going to see. I'm hearing and seeing a little of that, but I think it's going to be a much faster acceleration. Well, I think clearly, we've seen it with social media. You see it with Facebook, you see it with Twitter, you see it with Foursquare, you see it with all of them, big and small. What we're seeing overall, the macro trend that at least we're tracking at ARAMARK, and being a company that serves 15, 16, 17, 18 million people a day, just feeding them alone, not to mention all our other services in the US, as well as globally, what we're seeing is this idea of location-based services, of community of one, community of three, community of 1,000, and the idea most importantly that the consumer wants to construct every experience they have. They want a hand in that, in constructing that. So whether it's to go make their own burger, or whether it's to create the custom hotel suite, or whether it's to create a new experience at a trade show, consumers not only want a voice, they actually want to participate in creating their experience. And so I think that the most exciting thing about that is not that location-based services allow you to figure out where you are, but rather that location-based services allow you to take everything and everywhere the web lets you go and bring it into not only the palm of your hand, but into your brain while you're navigating a particular space or a particular group of spaces or spaces from one city to another or one country to another, to be able to create that continuous lifestyle connection. This idea of this technology married to location-based reality is what's, I think, the most exciting thing out there. When it comes to what our company is focusing on in terms of growing in, I would say, digital signage, or at least related to digital signage, it's our efforts around resources, our efforts around capabilities, infrastructure, are really geared around a consumer engagement centricity first. And anything that supports the idea that we understand our consumers and can continue to grow in our understanding of the consumer better and better than anyone else is the priority, number one. Number two, specifically to that point, is anything that allows us to leverage 70, 80, 90% of our enterprise towards key platforms, initiatives, operational sort of approaches. That's really where we focus. So it's really a 1-2 punch. It's how do we get more consumer experience or consumer engagement centric in very real, broad and tactical ways, and then specifically of those, which are the ones that are going to drive 80% of our organization's offering or capabilities or operations forward. So for us, it's really critical to define and measure against that standard. And a quick simple example is people in the analytics side of the business, consumer analytics, consumer journey, consumer mapping, building roadmaps around that methodology, and then making that repeatable and extendable and applicable across our verticals. That's really where our future lies over at least the next 3 to 4 to 5 years, if not decade. As I think about the Digital Signage Expo for this year and over the past few years that I've been involved, I've had the good fortune to be associated with the advisory board and to be associated with the industry, and I've learned a lot from that and tried to give back a little bit. And I think that when it comes to the event this year was really bigger. It was more exciting, and it felt more sort of national, global in a sense. I think there's a prestige factor that's more palpable, which is important because you simply have to be recognized as sort of the top opportunity, venue, or chance to get together and sort of flex your muscles as an industry. I think all that's good. I think the seminars and the opportunities to learn and be educated were also, the offering was broader and bigger and also very dynamic. I think that there's sort of two fundamental challenges, one in each of those. The first one with regards to the event is, I think we as an organization, but more importantly, I think our industry simply still believes it's about hardware. And it's real easy to prove that point. There's a ton of really cool displays and exhibits, and the idea of what's cool is how cool the monitor is. or that the player can do this, or maybe that the software can do that. And all of those are really important, but proportionately, there's not as much around the science, the art, the methodology of understanding the consumer, of understanding how to create focus groups, of understanding the project path for research and insights related to digital signage installation. There was a wonderful seminar I attended that 2 individuals gave, and it was fantastic. It was probably one of the least attended seminars. And I got to tell you, I would think anybody trying to implement a digital signage anything would have benefited from that. So it's that, again, that intelligence side beyond hardware and software is not proportionally represented well enough yet, and that's not DSE's fault. It's just the industry as a whole has to mature and understand, and as to my earlier comments, I do think we're going to see that in this next year. Real quickly on the seminars, I think that we still have to focus on understanding intrinsically that when people travel from around the country, around the world, they really want to be educated. They want to see the best, the brightest, the best practices, the benchmarks. They want to understand what other people are experiencing, but in a way that they can take back with them with tangible, actionable information. And I think some of the seminars do that very well, and some still don't quite do that yet. And again, it's part of that maturity. The industry as a whole, the manufacturers and the consultants and the participants and the operators, and we have different levels still of capabilities there and maturity in the business sense. And I think if we put a concentrated effort from now to next year, we can take a big leap forward, and I'm hoping within a couple years, the education piece of this event is more important than even the show floor. And not that that isn't important, that's the commerce piece, but the education piece. Knowledge is power, right? And in commerce, knowledge enables commerce, knowledge enables transaction. So I think if we can get there, I think we'll be not only much better for it, but an even more dynamic operation. My name is George Yunis. I'm with the ARAMARK Corporation, and I'm here at DSE 2011. Where are you?